Hi, my name is Samry,
And my name is Mustafa.
and today we'll be talking about our research and findings on cheatgrass.
So, what is cheatgrass and where does it come from? Cheatgrass is an annual invasive grass. It is a fast growing grass that outcompetes any other native species. It dries out in the summer and creates serious fire risk to the environment during the months of May and June. Cheatgrass comes from the green grasslands of Eastern Europe and Asia. Cheatgrass can be found in deserts to mountain peaks. Basically, it can be found anywhere, even along the sidewalks. So, the impacts of cheatgrass. The socioeconomic impacts due to cheatgrass is the loss of acres due to the wildfires created by it. Another important economic impact is the loss of jobs due to dangerous fires being near the workplace. Also, the amount of money to fight against the fires are a huge burden on our economy. The biggest threat from cheatgrass is the loss of habitats and the negative impacts due to the wildfires. Also, cheatgrass doesn't meet the needs of most wildlife species. Cheatgrass is one of the biggest invasive species problems in the western United States, estimated to cover 50 to 7 million acres. It also doesn't stay nutritious for other species long enough during the summer and fall, and it also isn't useful for a habitat for any species.
All right, so local and regional. Cheatgrass is probably the most common plant in the shrub steppe region of the Columbia Basin, and that's where it can be found in most of Washington state. It was introduced, cheatgrass itself was introduced to North America and probably occurred independently and then several times. Via shipments or contaminated crop seeds, packaging material. And then there was one known deliberate introduction for a college experiment in Pullman, Washington in 1898. And then by the early 1860s, cheatgrass had been identified in the US, in New York and Pennsylvania. And then in the early 1900s, cheatgrass was present in much of its current areas. Um, Cheatgrass is also known as downy brome, and um, it's been increasing ever since its first introduction to the U.S. And I'm sure you've seen it before because you they're like the little pieces that get stuck on your sock when you've been out on a field, and you have to pull them off. Um, And then in the basin, they can range sizes from 1 inch to 2 feet. And it's green in color in the fall when most native plants are not. Um, when you look at this diagram here, the reason it's so, it thrives well in this environment is because of one of the reasons because of its long roots and it's able to draw water easily with those longer roots. Globally, it was again brought in from Eurasia, so Europe, Northwest Africa, and then Southwestern Asia. And it was commonly seen as like a weed of sorts. Um, and it can grow in like hard conditions. Climate and adaptation. So cheatgrass germinates in the winter or fall, and then the seeds mature in spring. And then too little moisture can actually cause it to be a spring annual, which means it would be on the same cycle as the native plants, but that would only occur if the precipitation for that year was smaller. Under optimum conditions, germination can be 99.5% effective, and this plant is also wildly adaptable as it can grow in topography such as desert valleys or um, the highest mountain peaks. Um, and it's also it can be found in heavily grazed ranges, wasteland, burned areas, and it can be um, it's all those can be distribution sites for cheatgrass. This graph here was a study conducted in Utah to see if cheatgrass and warm weather and temperature um, correlate. And what they found is that elevation, with elevation being brought in, Cheatgrass thrives in warmer weather, but again, that also is um, weighted with the elevation in mind. All right, conservation and threat. Right now, there's no known need for conservation of this plant as it is an invasive species. Um, and so it's more seen as a threat. And so a lot of it is trying to figure out how to either handle it or make sure that it doesn't get out of control. This graph right here shows rangelands either infested or at the risk of infestation by cheatgrass in a 5-state area as of 1992. And as we can see in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, like the Pacific Northwest, that they're probably more in the potential future dominant, as the study was in 92. So we're probably at the 72,000 acres of land that would be infested by cheatgrass. The other graph over here shows non-native plants that are present in the US. And when we look at Washington State, the red, which stands for over 75%, is towards the Columbia Basin and Eastern Washington, which is where cheatgrass is commonly found. And that's it.
Sounds good. Yeah.